Let's practice writing linear equations when we're given 2 points. Specifically, let's go ahead and write those in slope-intercept form. So if you forget what slope-intercept form is, remember there are a few different forms for linear equations, but specifically for this video and for these practice problems, they're going to be in this form of y equals mx plus b. All right, so that's the one we're going to be focused on here, just because it's probably the most common for graphing. For number 1, we're given the 2 points of -4, 2 and 0, 14. Now, right off the bat, if you ever see a point that gives you a 0 right away, that's super nice because we know that the b value is just going to be the y value in this coordinate point or ordered pair. So if you see 0, 14, we know that 14 is actually the b value. Okay, so I'm just going to start off by writing out our equation to begin with here. So we're going to say that we have y is equal to mx plus b, and I'm just going to go ahead and use these colors specifically, mx, and then I'm going to write plus b afterwards. All right, so that's going to kind of be our original equation, or the kind of skeleton we're going to be using. Now at this point, we already know what b is because we knew that point of 0, 14, so please use that free point the best you can if you see it. So we have y is equal to mx, and then we're going to write plus 14. Okay, so we're on our way here. We just need to figure out what m is, okay? Now, if you take a look at these two values over here, this -4 is really an x, right? And then this y is equal to that 2. So we can go ahead and substitute those in for these values here. So this y value can become that 2, and this x value can become that -4 if we do a quick substitution. So substituting in the x and y value here, y we said was 2, so 2 will be equal to m. M is going to multiply by the x value, which we said was -4, and then we're going to add the 14 on afterwards, right? Now, cleaning this up a little bit, we can say this is 2 is equal to m times -4 is the same thing as -4 times m, or -4m, and then we're going to add 14 afterwards. Okay, so at this point, we're just going to be solving for m because we have that as our only variable. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and take away 14 from both sides, -14 minus 14. If we go ahead and do that on the left side, we can see that 2 minus 14 is -12. And on the right side, we're going to be left with this -4m. So I'm just going to get rid of these colors, but I'm going to keep the m as this yellowish color so we can solve for it and we can identify easily. And then what we're going to do is we're going to divide both sides by -4. If we go ahead and do that, we find out that m is equal to whatever -12 divided by -4 is, and that's going to be +3. All right, so there were two things we really needed to look for. One was this b value and one is this m value. So at the end of the day, we can go ahead and say that our final linear equation is going to be y is equal to 3x, the slope is 3, so 3 times x, and then plus 14. All right, so this right here would be our linear equation written in slope-intercept form for the line that goes through the 2 points we were given of the -4, 2 and 0, 14. All right, let's check out number 2. For number 2, we have 7, -2, and then 0, 19. So it looks like we're given another free point here, which is really nice. The 0, 19, try to think that's our b value, right? b is equal to 19. We know that right away. Also, what's maybe important to notice is that we can use this as an x and a y, just because that's an x value and a y value, right? So what's the equation that we're going to be using again? Here's our slope-intercept form equation that we just typically will start with, and we're going to substitute in our y value and x value with the other point that we are given, okay? So let's go ahead and do that right away. And so we have y is equal to -2, so we're going to make that substitution. -2 is equal to, and just like before, we're going to solve for m. So it's going to be m times whatever x is. X is 7, so I'm going to use parentheses to show that. And then it's going to be plus 19. Okay, now turning this around just a little bit, we keep this -2 is equal to, and then m times 7 is the same thing as 7m, or 7 times m. And then we're going to write plus 19 afterwards. Okay, at this point, let's just go ahead and solve for m. So I'm just going to write -19 and -19 so we can isolate it. If we subtract 19 from both sides, -2 minus 19 on the left will be -21, and that's going to be equal to 7m on the right side. So I'm just going to use the 7 and make the m still the same color so it stands out. And then finally, if we want to solve for m here, what we're going to do is divide both sides by 7. So that will isolate and get 1m. So 7 divided by 7 is 1, or 1m, and then negative 21 divided by 7 is negative 3. So we have two values that we needed. We have b and we have m. And so if we write our final linear equation, we can say y is equal to negative 3x. So we need x and y to stay as our variables, and then plus 19. All right, so this right here would be our linear equation in slope-intercept form. We have the slope and we have the y-intercept, and it goes through the 2 points that we were originally given. All right, cool. Let's try number 3. For number 3, it looks like we are given another free point of 0, negative 21. So that means b is equal to negative 21. So make sure we take care of that first because it's a free bit of information. Again, here is our slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. This will be our x, this will be our y, the 4 and the 3. So let's go ahead and substitute in the y value and the x value, as well as the b value that we were given. And so we can solve for m. Okay, so y is equal to 3, so we have 3 is equal to m multiplied by x, but x is 4, so it's going to be m times 4. And then we're adding b, but b is negative, so no worries, just write minus 21, or you could write plus a negative, but that's not necessary. And then 3 is equal to m times 4, which is really just 4m, all right, it's the same thing, less writing, and then minus 21. At this point, we have to solve for m, so we can do that. First, we can add 21 to both sides of our equation here. If we go ahead and do that, on the left side, 3 plus 21 is 24. And on the right side, we're going to be left with 4m. So I'm going to write 4m. And then to get m completely alone and have a coefficient of 1, let's go ahead and divide both sides by 4. And 24 divided by 4, that is going to be 6. And then we're going to have this and say m equals to 6. All right, so we have our slope and we have our y-intercept. So our linear equation is going to stay y is equal to 6x, so 6x, and then minus 21. All right, so there is our slope-intercept form equation for these 2 points. All right, for number 4, looks like we have these 2 points and we're given another freebie, so 0, negative 17. That means that b is equal to negative 17. So look for where you see a 0 if that's nice. And then let's go ahead and see what's the equation we want. And that's right, there is our y is equal to mx plus b, where x can be represented by 5 and it can be and the y can be represented by this negative 2. So here is our x and here is our y. So let's go ahead and substitute everything we know. We know x, y, and b, and we can solve for m. All right, so we can write negative 2 for y is equal to m times x. What is x here? X is going to be 5. Let's go ahead and do that. And then instead of writing plus b or plus negative 17, let's just write minus 17. Okay, so we have this negative 2 is equal to, and then m times 5, that's just going to be 5m. I'm going to turn that around like this, and then write minus 17. So let's solve for m. To do that, let's go ahead and add 17 to both sides. That's the addition property of equality. Okay, go ahead and add that to both sides. So negative 2 plus 17 on the left should be 15. And then on the right side, we should have 5m. Then to get m completely alone, we should divide both sides by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3, 5 divided by 5 is 1, so we have 1m. And we can say that m is equal to 3, which is the slope. So m is 3, b is negative 17, so we have everything we need to write our linear equation and write y is equal to 3 times x, or 3x, and then minus 17. That's our y-intercept. So our linear equation is now complete, written in slope-intercept form. All right, moving on to number 5, we have these 2 points of 0, 6, and negative 3, 4. Now, in this case, we can see here that 0, 6 is going to be that free point, so we know b is equal to 6. That's where this graph would cross the y-axis. Now, in terms of these 2 points we're given, it doesn't matter the order that they're written, but the 0, 6, that actually lets us know that b is equal to 6. Okay, so that's a nice given point, and so let's go ahead and see what's our slope-intercept form again. So there we have kind of that original formula where x is negative 3 and y is going to be positive 4 here. So let's go ahead and substitute those in so that we can solve for m. Okay, so y is going to be 4. So we're going to write 4 is equal to, and then it's going to be m times this negative 3. So m times negative 3 and then plus b. And in case this case we have b is 6, so we're going to write plus 6. Now just cleaning this up a little bit, we have 4 is equal to m times negative 3 is the same thing as negative 3m, and then we're going to add 6 afterwards. And let's go ahead and see if we can solve for m. So let's go ahead and take away 6 from the right and take it away from the left and see what happens here. So on the left side, 4 take away 6 is going to be negative 2. And on the right side, we have negative 3 multiplied by m. And then to get m completely alone, or isolate it, let's go ahead and divide both sides by negative 3. If we do that, then we have m is equal to, and then negative 2 divided by negative 3 is just going to be a positive 2/3. So that's going to be our slope. Okay, so up till now, all our slopes were kind of just integers, right? Everything kind of canceled out nicely, but in this one, we can see that we have a ratio of 2 to 3. So we have our slope, we have our y-intercept, so we should have enough information to write our slope-intercept form, which is going to be y is equal to 2/3 x plus 6. All right, so there is going to be our linear equation written in slope-intercept form. For number 6, we have the points negative 4, 3 and 0, 5. And this 0, 5 is our nice free point. We know b is equal to 5. Okay, we can consider this as our x and this as our y. And let's give this one a try. So what's the skeleton we're looking at? Here it is. We have our y equals mx plus b. So hopefully you're getting used to that. We have x and y. So let's go ahead and substitute those in. So we're going to have 3 is equal to, and let's make m what? We're going to solve for m, so keep that the same. X is going to be negative 4, so we'll multiply by negative 4. And b is 5, so let's do plus 5 here. We have 3 is equal to negative 4 times m is just going to be negative 4m. And then we're going to add 5 on afterwards. And let's solve for m. Let's go ahead and take away 5 from the right, take away 5 from the left. 3 take away 5, that should be negative 2 on the left side. And on the right, we have negative 4 times m. And let's just go ahead and divide both sides by negative 4 to get rid of that negative 4. So we're going to be left with 1m equals, or just m equals, and then negative 2 divided by negative 4 is the same thing as positive 1/2. So we have a slope, we have a y-intercept. We can write our linear equation as y is equal to 1/2 x and then plus 5. All right, there is our linear equation for the 2 points that we were given. For number 7, take a look at what is different here. Unfortunately for number 7, we don't have any free points, right? So this is a little bit more annoying. When this is the case, you have 2 different points and neither of them are very helpful. What you have to do is not find b first, but actually find m first, okay? So let's go ahead and call the first point here. I'm gonna call this x1, we'll call this y1. And for the second point, let's call this one x2, and let's call this y2. Now, if you don't remember, we have a formula for slope, and that formula is m is equal to, and what's going to be this y2 minus the y1, so y2 minus y1. I'm going to write it just like this, and that's going to be on top of x2 minus x1, so x2 minus x1. So it's really just a change of y, or the vertical change over the horizontal change. All right, so if we do some substitutions here to find the slope, we can say m is equal to, y2 in this case is going to be 2. So take 2 and then take away, y1 in this case is going to be 6. All right, that's gonna be the numerator, or the change in height, or change of y values, on top of, and then x2 looks like it's going to be 3. So we're gonna have 3 take away this 5. So that's gonna be the distance between x values. And so if we go ahead and figure that out, on top we have 2 minus 6, so 2 minus 6 should be negative 4. And on bottom we have 3 take away 5, which should be negative 2. So if we have negative 4 divided by negative 2, we can find out here that m equals positive 2. All right, so we have the slope, but now we have to find out the y-intercept. Now remember, our general form equation is y is equal to mx plus b, where we already have the m in this case. And then b is kind of what we're looking for, right? That's this piece at the end. And for the x and y, remember x and y are just any points that are on this line. So in this case, for this x and y, this x and this y, you can choose if you want to use these points here, or these numbers 3, 2, or you can use 5, 6. It's totally your choice. I think for me in this case, what I'd like to end up using here is I like to use maybe smaller numbers, so I'm going to go with this 3 and 2. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to make my y equal to 2. So I'm going to say 2 is equal to our m, which we find out was 2, and multiply this by x, which in this case is 3, and then plus b. So notice how we're solving for b now. So we have 2 is equal to 2 times 3, that's going to equal 6. And so I'm going to go ahead and just make that a 6 like this, and then plus b. And to find out what b is, we got to get rid of the 6 and get rid of the 6 on both sides, subtract it. And if we do that, then 2 minus 6 is going to be negative 4. 6 minus 6 is 0, so we have negative 4 is equal to b. All right, so we can actually just say that b is equal to negative 4. So at this point, we already have figured out our 2 for our slope, and we have our negative 4 for our y-intercept. So from that, we know that 0, negative 4 is going to be a point on this graph. That would be a third point on it. And we can write our linear equation as y is equal to 2x and then minus 4. All right, this would be the linear equation of the line that would go through the 2 points we got. All right, for number 8, looks like we have 2 points again where we don't have a y-intercept from the beginning, so we have to do that little bit of extra work. I think it's helpful to just start by labeling our x1, y1 and x2, y2, and then remembering our slope formula, and then let's just do some substituting in. So m is equal to y2, that's going to be this negative 2, and we're going to take away y1, which is going to be this positive 4. That's going to be in the numerator, or the change of y, and then we have x2 minus x1. So we have positive 2, take away, what do we have on the bottom here? That's going to be negative 7. All right, so we have m is equal to negative 2 take away 4, that's going to end up being negative 6. And then on the bottom, 2 take away negative 7, that's going to end up being positive 9. So we can finally say that m is equal to negative 2/3, right? A negative divided by positive is negative, and then 6/9 can simplify to 2/3 if you divide them both by their GCF of 3. So there is our slope. Now let's go ahead and see if we can find our b value, or our y-intercept. So again, that's our general form for slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and then you get to choose whichever point you want between these two. So you can use this one or this one. I generally try to just use lower numbers. I think that's easier, so I'm just going to do that. And so y is going to be negative 2. Negative 2 is equal to m, we already figured out was negative 2/3, so let's write negative 2/3 times x, which in this case x is 2, and then plus b. That's what we're going to be solving for here. All right, so on the left side we have negative 2, and that's going to be equal to, and then if we're going to go ahead and multiply this, negative 2/3 multiplied by 2, which is 2 over 1, that's going to end up being negative 4 over 3. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and write that down, and that's going to be negative 4/3. So let's go ahead and write negative 4/3, and then plus b. All right, at this point, we are going to go ahead and add 4/3 to both sides of the equation. So add 4/3 to the right side and add 4/3 to the left side. And let's see what that is going to get us, right? Now, if we're thinking about this negative 2 in terms of thirds, negative 2 is the same thing as negative 2 over 1. And if you want it to be in thirds, then go ahead and multiply top and bottom by 3. So it's going to be negative 6/3, right? Now, if we're adding 4/3 to that, we're going to add 4/3. Now, negative 6 plus 4, that's going to be negative 2. And that's going to be a 3 on the bottom. So negative 2 plus 4/3 is going to be negative 2/3. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that. We're going to get negative 2/3. And that's going to be equal to that b value. And we can go ahead and turn around and say that b is equal to negative 2/3. And so we now have the slope and we have the y-intercept. And we can go ahead and say, oh, it's kind of actually interesting that they're the same thing. That's kind of a coincidence. Y is equal to negative 2/3 x minus 2/3. All right, cool. So there we have our slope-intercept form for the linear equation that goes through those 2 points. All right, for number 9, looks like we have 2 new points, and once again, just like earlier, they are not very helpful because they don't give us a b value, so we have to work for it. Let's go ahead and find the slope first and then deal with b afterwards. Let's start off by labeling our x1, y1 and x2, y2. And remember, this would be our formula for finding the slope. It's really just the ratio of change of y over change of x. So for y2, let's use -12, and let's take away y1. y1 is -6, so let's go ahead and just put that in parentheses, just so it's not too confusing. And then on the bottom here, we have x2. x2 is -1, and let's take away x1. Looks like x1 is going to be +3. All right, on top, -12 take away -6 is the same thing as -12 plus 6, and that would be -6. And on the bottom, we have -1 take away 3, which is really just -1 plus -3, that's gonna be -4. A negative over a negative is really just a positive, and then 6 over 4 can simplify down to 3 over 2. So here's our slope. Now that we have our slope, let's go ahead and see if we can find our y-intercept. Again, here's our general form that we're going to be using, and then we can choose between this point here and this point here in terms of our x and our y. It's totally your choice. They both will work. These numbers to me are a little smaller, so I'm going to use those ones. The y value there is -6. We have -6 is equal to m, which we already found out is 3 over 2 times x, and in this case we're choosing x is 3, and then plus b afterwards. Okay, at this point we're going to go ahead and multiply this 3 over 2 times 3. So on the side here, 3 over 2 multiplied by 3 over 1. Can't cross cancel anything. That's going to be 3 times 3 is 9. And then 2 times 1 is going to be 2. So that's going to be 9 over 2. 9 over 2 is the same thing as 4.5, right? So totally up to you if you want to keep it as an improper fraction or a mixed number. I think I'm just going to use an improper fraction here. So I'm going to go ahead and write that we have -6 is equal to 9 over 2 plus b. Okay, now we're going to solve for b, so let's go ahead and take away 9 over 2 from the right side and take away 9 over 2 from the left side. If we go ahead and do so, the 9 over 2's will, cancel each other out and make 0, but we really have to figure out what -6 minus this -9 over 2 is. Now -6 is the same thing as -6 over 1. And if we need common denominators, then multiply by 2 and 2. So that's going to be -12 over 2. So we really have -12 over 2 take away 9 over 2. And so keep in mind that if we are subtracting, this is the same thing as -12 plus -9. All right, if you add the opposite, over 2. And so -12 plus -9 is -21 over 2. And so -21 over 2 is really -10 and 1/2. Okay, so just try to be careful, take your time with that. If you wanted to use mixed numbers, feel free to do that as well. But we can go ahead and say here that -10.5 is going to be equal to this b value. And so we can turn around and say b is equal to -10.5. So we have our slope, we have our y-intercept, and so we can write our linear equation, say y is equal to 3/2, so 3 over 2x minus 10.5. That would be our linear equation. All right, let's check out number 10. For number 10, we have -9, 4 and -21, -4, and neither of these give us a y-intercept, so let's try to find the slope first. All right, so right here we have our x1, y1 and x2, y2. Let's go ahead and find the slope. Here is our general formula for finding the slope, and let's go ahead and substitute some values in. So y2 is going to be -4, and then take away y1. y1 should be +4, so we have -4 take away a +4. And then on bottom we have what? x2 minus x1, so x2 looks like it's -21, and then we're going to take away x1, which is a -9. So let's go ahead and put that in parentheses. Now let's go ahead and figure out and simplify this down a little bit. So we have m is equal to -4 minus 4 on top is going to be -8. And on bottom we have -21 take away -9, which is really -21 plus 9. And that should be -12. Now, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and then we can divide 8 and 12 by their GCF of 4. And if we do that, we're gonna get 2 over 3. That would be our slope here. All right, so let's go ahead and use that to find out the b value now. Here's our general form that we're gonna use for slope-intercept form. We can choose which point we wanna use for x and y, and these numbers are a little smaller, so I'm gonna go with these. So if that's what I'm using, then y would be 4, and that's gonna be equal to, and m we know is 2/3. And then we have this x. What is x gonna be? It looks like x is -9. Oh, I actually kind of really like that. Maybe you'll see why in just a moment. And then we have plus b. All right, so let's go ahead and multiply this 2/3 times -9. Feel free to do that wherever you have some space on the side. So 2/3 multiplied by -9. If you're wondering why I like that, well, you can see here that these can cross cancel. So that's gonna become a 1 and a -3. Then this 2 times -3 is gonna equal -6 on top. Then 1 times 1 on bottom is 1. And so this just equals -6. So we don't have to deal with fractions anymore, okay? So we have 4 is equal to -6 plus this b, okay? And then I can go ahead and get rid of this -6. So by adding 6 and adding 6 to both sides of the equation here, and we find out if we do that, that 10 is gonna be equal to that b value. And we can turn it around and say b is equal to 10. So we have our slope, we have our y-intercept, and we can write that y is equal to 2/3 x plus 10. All right, so there we have it. We have our slope-intercept form equation for the line that goes through the 2 points that we were given. All right, for number 11, looks like we're in a similar situation here. We have 2 points and neither of them have a 0 for an x value, so we have to find the slope first. Here's our x1, y1, and x2, y2. And here's our formula to find the slope. So let's go ahead and make some substitutions. So we have m is equal to y2 looks like it's 11, and then we're gonna take away y1. y1 is -5, so let's do minus this -5. And then on top of what's x2 minus x1, x2 is -12. Take away x1, which is 8. All right, cool. So we just substituted in. Now we just have to do some order of operations. So on top 11 take away -5 ends up being 11 plus 5, or 16. And on bottom here, -12 take away 8 is -12 plus -8, which is -20. All right, so dividing top and bottom both by 4, or their GCF. And we know a negative and a positive divided by together is a negative, so it's gonna be -4/5 for the slope. All right, so let's go ahead and plug this into our equation to find b. So again, here is our original equation, and then in terms of what we're plugging in here, doesn't really matter which point you use again, neither of these are seeming that great. I'm just gonna use this 8, -5. So y is -5, and that's gonna be equal to -4/5 multiplied by x. So what's x? X is 8. Oh, this one's not going to be very pretty. Plus b. That's what we're solving for. All right, so we have to figure out what this is here. Now keep in mind that's -4/5. You can give the negative to the top. That's always fine. Times 8. Can't cross cancel. So this is going to be -32/5. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So that's what -4/5 times 8 is -32/5. So let's go ahead and write this as -32/5. And then we're gonna say that's gonna still have this plus b. Now to get rid of the -32/5, let's go ahead and add 32/5. And again, if you like mixed numbers more, then feel free to do so. But if you want to just keep them as impropers, you can as well. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's go ahead and figure out, well, we know that these are going to cancel out with each other, which is great, but what's -5 plus 32/5? Well, -5 is the same thing as -5/1. And then if we go ahead and get common denominators, do times 5 times 5, that's -25/5. Okay, so that's what this -5 is. That's -25/5 plus 32/5. Now, since they have common denominators now, -25 plus 32 is going to be 7. So it's going to be 7/5, which is the same thing as 1 2/5. Okay, so if we take that -5 and add the 32 over 5, we get this positive 1 2/5. So we're going to say 1 2/5 is equal to the b value. And so we can say b is equal to 1 2/5. So we have our slope, we have our y-intercept, so we have enough information for our slope-intercept form and say y is equal to -4/5 times x, and then plus 1 2/5, because that's the y-intercept, it's positive. So let's go ahead and put it just like this, and that would be our equation. Alrighty, last problem for number 12. It's just as bad as all the other ones, it seems. No 0, anything, so let's just go ahead and find slope first. We have our x1 and y1 labeled, and we have our formula for slope. So let's just go ahead and substitute in to see if we can figure out that slope. y2 is 6, so 6 take away y1 looks like -9, so 6 minus -9. And then if we go ahead on bottom, we see x2 is going to be 5, and then what's x1? -4, so we have to take away a -4. Let's put that in parentheses. All right, cool. So on top we have 6 take away -9, that becomes 6 plus 9, that is just 15 on top. And on bottom, 5 take away -4 is just 5 plus 4, and that's going to be 9. Now positive over positive is nice, it's just positive, but then we can divide top and bottom by the GCF of 3 to get 5/3 for the slope. Now to go ahead and use that slope and to use a point here to figure out what our b value is going to be, or a y-intercept, I'm going to use this 5, 6. So that 6 is the y value, so it's going to be 6 is equal to, m we said was 5/3, we just spent all that time figuring that out, multiplied by x. X is going to be 5. This is not the prettiest problem. That's okay. We know what to do, hopefully. And so plus b, so we have to figure out what 5/3 times 5 is. And so if we write that on the side here, that's 5/3 times 5. That's 5 over 1. Can't cross cancel anything, so it's just going to be 25 over 3. And just like the last few problems, I'm going to keep them as improper fractions. Okay, so I'm going to write 6 is equal to 25 over 3, and then plus this b value. And let's go ahead and get b alone by taking away 25 over 3 and taking away 25 over 3. All right, so if we go ahead and do that to both sides here, then the 25 over 3 take away 25 over 3 will cancel out. But what's 6 take away 25 over 3? Well, 6 is 6 over 1, and then we're going to get common denominators. I think we can make this times 3 times 3. So that's going to be 18 over 3. That's the same thing as 6, right? So if we take the 18 over 3, and then we take away the 25 over 3, now we can do this. 18 take away 25 is going to be -7. So it's going to be -7 over 3. All right, so that's what 6 take away 25 over 3 is. So let's go ahead and write that. It's going to be -7 over 3, and that's equal to that b value. And so we know the y-intercept, or b, is equal to I guess we can say -7/3 or -2 1/3 if you want to write the mixed number, but it doesn't really matter. There's our slope, there's our y-intercept. Our final equation is going to say y is equal to 5/3 multiplied by x, or 5/3 x, and then take away 2 1/3. There is our linear equation. All right, so there you have 12 different practice problems on finding the slope-intercept form for linear equations when given 2 points. Now, when you did the first 6 problems, they were a little bit nicer because you were given the b value kind of as a freebie because you saw that 0, y value. And then for the last 6 problems, they weren't so nice and didn't give us that. So we had to go ahead and find out the slope first and then solve for the b value or the y-intercept before we could write our equation. So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And as always, keep up the great work, and I'll see you in the next one.